Good morning, YouTube, and welcome to another edition of Cooking with John. Today we have another breakfast item, and I think we'll have 2 or 3 more breakfast items coming up in the next week, and then we'll switch back to some of my more favorite family traditional foods. Today we're making one of my family's favorite recipes that's been passed down from generation to generation, from great-grandmother to grandmother, to dad to mom. It's absolutely delicious. It's called cheese and toast. It is Velveeta cheese. You can also use any type of big loaf cheese, they call it. We have a little bit of heavy cream, some flour, some butter, and some sourdough bread that we'll toast up at the end of the video. Like I said, this is a recipe that's been passed down from generation to generation of my family. It was something that started on the farm. It was cheap to make. It was delicious. It's really a hearty food that my family members that worked on farms over the years would eat in the morning to get the energy they needed. And like I said, it was also something that was very cheap to make, but also delicious. The first thing that we're gonna do is melt 2 tablespoons of butter in our pan. And now that we've got our butter in there, it's all melted, we wanna let it heat up just a little bit, and then we'll add our flour. The butter is just starting to bubble a tiny bit, and this is the perfect time to add the flour. We're gonna add 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and we're just gonna do that one at a time, and we're gonna constantly stir and mix the flour into the butter. You can use a whisk, or you can use a fork to do this, but you just wanna constantly be stirring that, and what that's gonna do is allow the butter just to kind of thicken up a little bit. The flour will get absorbed in the butter, and this will be the base of our roux, or our white sauce, which is used in a lot of different recipes. It's gonna bubble just a little bit more. Now we're gonna add our 2nd tablespoon of flour, and again, constantly stir that in so we have a nice thick paste of butter and flour. And we're gonna let this cook for about 2 minutes. We don't wanna let it brown. If you let it brown, it'll really start to taste like flour and not the base flavor that we want. Alright, so just mix this up. Mix it up. We're gonna go ahead and add our 3rd tablespoon of flour. Bam. Mix that up real good. And it's starting to thicken up a little bit, so what I'm going to go ahead and do right now is add 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. And we're going to mix that up real good with a whisk. And when you're mixing in the cream, you actually want to take it off of the heat. You want to mix this up before you start to cook it. Alright, and there we have our butter, our flour, and our cream. And this is going to be pretty much the roux. And we're going to return that to the stove, and we're going to let it cook until it starts to bubble. And when it starts to bubble, we're going to add the cheese. And we don't need too much Velveeta cheese. It depends on how thick and how much cheese you really want to add. But we'll do probably about, I would say, maybe 1/4 of a block. So we're going to take this, and we're just going to cut it up into chunks. Cut it again, and we will cut it again. So our sauce is just starting to bubble. We want to make sure that we are constantly stirring this and mixing it up. It's going to get real thick, as you can see. It's coming out just about perfect. It's just starting to bubble a little bit on the outside. Now we're going to add the Velveeta cheese. Just go ahead and mix that in. It'll take a minute for the cheese to melt. But once it does, it'll mix with the roux. Come out nice and cheesy. And it's starting to all come together. As you can see, we have a really kind of like a thick, cheesy mix. We're gonna add just a little bit of milk, and that is gonna help thin this out. I would say maybe 1/4 cup of milk. And then just go ahead, mix that in there, and cook it until all the milk is dissolved into the cheese and flour sauce. I'm gonna go ahead and add some pepper, because Nikki and I really like pepper, as you guys know. And just a pinch of salt. And I'm also going to start toasting my toast. I have a nice loaf of sourdough bread that I'll be toasting today. And as you can see, it's really thinned out, and now we have just a really nice cheese sauce. And here's the toast we're using, just a nice loaf of freshly baked sourdough bread. Toasting it up. We've got our toast, we've got our cheese, and all you do is you take a spoon, you put a little bit of cheese on your plate, and this is how it's served. And like I said, this is one of the things that I grew up eating, so it brings back a lot of memories of my childhood when I have it, and it's absolutely delicious. So good. Now you just take your toast, you dip it in the cheese sauce, and you enjoy. And I'll tell you what, I enjoy every last bite. So good. And this is by no means a health food. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a very pretty fattening recipe, but every once in a while, it's a great weekend meal. If you're gonna go out, you have a big day of hiking or fishing or running around, going to a sports game, something like that. This is just a fantastic recipe. Nikki's taking care of Iris, so I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna fix her a plate, I'm gonna bring it to her, and I know she's gonna be really, really happy to get my family's famous cheese and toast. And if you wanna spice it up a little bit, add a variation, you can do bacon, diced ham, or dried beef, and just add it right to the cheese when it's done, mix it up. It's kind of a meaty cheese sauce, and it is delicious. As always, guys, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Cooking with John, making my family's famous cheese and toast. I am John from John's Cooking Channel, saying thanks for watching. This channel is just going so well, and I'm really, really thankful for all the support I'm getting from you guys. We'll see you next week with more cooking.